Good evening. Wednesday night, here we are. If you're here watching us, thank you very much, because you could easily be sitting in the garden or in a beer garden having a beer, I guess. But we're here, and it's an exciting one tonight. It's something a little bit different we haven't done before. We've broadcast from Los Angeles to England, but we've never actually had a guest from Los Angeles coming through to us in England, and that's what we've got tonight. So without further ado, please, let's give a warm welcome to Stephen Allen Green, ladies and gentlemen, live from Hollywood. Here he is.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. How are you? No, I miss all that. Yeah, I'm fine. It's a busy podcast day. After this one, I've got my own comedy dish one.
I know, and you were such lovely. It was lovely to be a guest on yours earlier in the year.
We definitely want to have you back.
Yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I'm all right. I got a lot on, which is a good thing.
That's good.
And I've had a really great blessing in recently, which I will talk about later on.
That's it. And of course, for those that don't know, me and Stephen met 2019, and I was visiting Los Angeles to do the Los Angeles Comedy Festival, and I landed and went straight to the radio station that I unfortunately can't remember the name of now, and we
KLOS.
shared guests, weren't we, on there? What was it?
KLOS.
KLOS.
Correct. Yes.
Correct. Yes. And that's where we met on the studio floor, in fact, didn't we? And had a little bit of a chat, and then and that's it. And we've been sort of talking and communicating on Facebook and meeting up for coffees and stuff. And here we are. You've been kind enough to come along and tell everybody. And that what's great about this is that a lot of the well, I should explain that Stephen's what we call, I say old Hollywood, in the sense that he's grown up in Hollywood. And whilst I was over there earlier in the month, was kind enough to show me around and explain where all the old studios were. Some of them now, they've built a lot of it, but it was really, really good. And I think that what a lot of people get out of tonight is actually hearing, about the real Hollywood and the real journey. Not necessarily what we all just get a little snap on the news or the Oscars or something like that. So, once again,
I've been to the Oscars. I forgot to include that in the list of questions.
Well, you can tell us about it now if you want. We don't care.
That's a good story.
So tell us, how did you used your British accent to get a place to sleep, I understand, when you came over here? Because you did work over here, didn't you, for what, 7 years, 8 years?
No, I totaled it up, and it's nearly 20 that I worked and lived in the UK.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I first came to London in December of '82 and worked at the old Comedy Store on Dean Street. And then I went back in '92. So basically, I had the Comedy Store in LA I was focused on for 10 years, and road work and writing and acting. And then it was when I was living in New York at the Chelsea Hotel. I started going to London in '95, like a week, and then 3 weeks, and then 2 months and 4 months, and then finally I settled there, bought a flat. I still came back to New York and LA, but I as far as I was concerned, I switched identities to being a Brit. I still feel like a Brit now, just temporarily visiting Hollywood.
Well, I remember looking at something online on one of the YouTubes of you in one of the London comedy clubs, and I loved it. I loved the way you worked. Brilliant.
Thank you very much. Well, yeah. I mean, I've added to my style. I think the big, kind of like, in a way, I'm not comparing myself to the Beatles, but they're always a good thing to look at in terms of creative flow and metamorphosis, is that when I did my one-man show, when John Doughty helped me write the show about me and Jerry Lewis, the London Palladium, it was the first time ever that I talked to the audience as telling them a story, as making a point, as taking them through something. Because I used to be, it was all about, quick hitting. Here's a laugh. Here's a joke. Here's a funny song. Here's an impression. Here's some crowd work. Thank you. Good night. And, then that was tied in with my Pharaoh performance that I added in October of '86. But yeah, so I forgot the question.
You were talking about your accent and you pretending to be a British butler. That's where you were going with it, I think.
Yeah. So what happened was I broke up with a girlfriend, and living at her place, of course, like an LA comic should be, you know, broke and living with your girlfriend, not your girlfriend, but one's girlfriend. And God, you know, I just went on this couch surfing escapade. Sometimes I had money for a hotel. Sometimes I rented an apartment for a month, but a lot of it was just, you know, my credit had just been destroyed, and my income was gone, and none of my income from the UK mattered here in terms of resume. So it was a tough time, and I had to couch surf. I felt it was interesting was I learned, you know what the number one thing I think that got me invitations to stay in someone's apartment for a night or for 2 weeks? Do you?
Go on.
It was to be interesting. Yeah. I mean, I was always helpful. You know, so here's the story. So I was living in constant panic, and it was really hard, and I couldn't concentrate on anything creatively, and I felt a lot of my mates just, I wouldn't say abandoned me. I said they were just busy with their own lives and troubles and stuff. But at the time, I felt helpless, and that anybody, you know, could just help me get a gig.
So it doesn't sound like you've done too bad, because you bumped into Quentin Quarantino in the middle of all that. Am I right?
Yeah, well, I've turned it all around. I don't want to take it down I don't want to circle the drain just yet. So anyway, I found myself in like about 8 years of couch surfing and different itinerant places to live. Oh, yeah. But I mean, I also didn't have the responsibility. So I'd go on the road and visit people, and I do gigs. And so it was kind of a freedom. It's a whole book about that.
Yeah.
And people hired me to write books for them. And that's where I made most of my money, was writing.
Right.
And anyway, so it was one night. I had no place to stay and no money. I was staying in Korean spas. I found a place where I could pay $20 a night. I sleep in a big room on mats with dozens of Korean men, and then, but you have the sauna, the spa. I mean, it's great. I mean, for $20, $600 a month. Anyway, there's that. One night I had no money, and I just felt so sorry for myself and so done by the LA comedy scene or the world or God or whoever was out to get me. But of course, it ended up being me. I was about to sleep in my car, and I couldn't. It was too small a car. So I parked behind the Improv on Melrose, and I had like $5. And I thought, I'll go buy myself a Diet Coke and just sort of chill out here, you know. So I'm at the Improv at the Annex, which is called the Lab, which is a smaller little performance space, lovely space. I've worked there.
That's where we was there, weren't we?
Yeah, that's where I was. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool, yeah.
And so on the telly is a documentary about comedy in LA, and they were focusing on the time that the Improv caught on fire and some Comedy Store comics were blamed. And this was before my time by about 3 years, but it was a really serious bone of contention, which is why I got into trouble at the Improv when I wanted to abandon ship at the Comedy Store, and you know, they hated me walking in. So anyway, so I go there, and there's this guy standing there, young guy, and he's talking out loud. He must be a little bit inebriated. And he's talking about, it was the Comedy Store comics that burned down the Improv, and I let him go on. And then, because I didn't want to cause any trouble, I said to him, kind of out loud, I said, "Excuse me, are you referring to the Comedy Store in Leicester Square? Because I don't see it. I mean, that's 6,000 miles away. I don't really see how that could have a problem here." And he went, he came to me, and we started talking about comedy. And, he was fascinated. I was from London, and he would, so who's your favorite comedian? And he would say, George Carlin. And I went, George who? I just was, are you getting this, Adrian?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, someone tell Adrian to laugh. There's already been 2 or 3 opportunities he's missed.
Well, no. I was wondering
just to give him an electric shock to his bullets to start laughing, please.
I
Very
thought,
hot out here.
I was
You should
wondering
call
if
the
that
show
was, I thought you were
Make
going to say
Adrian Laugh. That's what the
I
show.
thought you was
This
going to
week-
say that was Claude Van Damme that you were talking to. That's what I was waiting for, the punchline. I was on that one. I wasn't on the gag one.
All right. So here's what happened. All right, here's what happened. Just the punchline of the story is at closing time, 2 a.m., he invited me back to his flat, which was nearby. He was having drinks with mates who were coming over. I stayed in character the entire time. I'd say things like, I'm waiting for my chauffeur to pick me up, take me to the airport. I'm heading back to London. But it's getting a bit late. But maybe if I could stay here overnight on your couch, it would be all right. I could take a morning flight. And he went, yeah, sure. So, I woke up the next day and he was still sleeping in his room. I was sleeping on the couch, and I went to see if I could make coffee, but the kitchen was a mess. So I cleaned up the kitchen, and then I saw some eggs and some bread, and I brought breakfast to him, knocked on his door, and excuse me, John. I took the liberty of making breakfast, and thank you. So, I ended up being like this. I stayed in character. I think it was 3 weeks, and I'd get confused sometimes. Someone would call me, and I'd answer my mobile. I go, "Yeah, hello. I mean, hello." And so one time, so after I couldn't take it anymore, and I mean, I was just holding this ruse, playing this role, and I felt, I was deceiving this very generous man who was letting me stay in his place, although I was cleaning up and shopping and paying my way in a sense. And I finally said, John, I have to talk to you. Please sit down. I'm not who you really think I am. And I explained to him I'm really Stephen Allegrini, comedian from the Comedy Store, and he laughed. And I stayed there another month. And we stayed friends for a long time. Can you hear me, Adrian?
I can. I'm listening to every word.
Don't listen to every word. You're not getting. Okay. Okay. That story's over now.
So that was your. So you're saying to me that was your Van Damme? Is that what you're saying?
My bandana?
Jean-Claude Van Damme, the actor. That's who you were staying in his house. Is that right?
No, that's a totally separate incident.
Oh,
no.
Right, okay, I'm looking.
Oh no, I said John, not Jean.
That's right. I thought there was a.
No, this was a comic. This was just an LA comic.
Just an LA comic.
I apologize for the confusion.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Right, tell us about Jean Van Damme then. Now now I've bored you senseless with his man's name.
All right, Jean-Claude Van Damme. So many years ago, I belonged to a very expensive gym in LA. I joined because I liked racquetball, and it was near the house, and I could afford it. But my knee was hurting, and so I wanted to lose weight. So I couldn't really felt like I could run, but I did the bicycle, and I got there one Saturday, and it was really just too busy. But I found an empty bike, and I'm pedaling, and suddenly some dude taps me on the shoulder, and I turn around. Can I help you? And he goes, yeah, you mind not using that bike? And I said, I looked around, and why? And then there was an empty seat to my right, and I thought, well, maybe he wants to sit there and work out with his friend who was pedaling. And I said, sure. So I just went to another bike, didn't want to deal with it. And he comes over halfway around the gym and taps on my shoulder again. We just want to thank you. No, that's okay. Work out. We just want to thank you. Look, I just want to work out. You got the seat. Enjoy. He went away. And then I look over to where I had moved from, and the guy who I had moved from was coming into focus, and I realized it was Jean-Claude Van Damme. So I'm producing The Big Show at the Palladium. I thought, hey, give him a couple of jokes to read and put him on the poster. What the fuck? It's L.A. But I was respectful. I didn't want to approach him, so I approached the guy who was now talking to the floor manager. And I waved him over, and he came up the stairs, and I was about to say, hey, I put my hand out to say, hey, I'm Stephen Allegrini. I'm a producer. And instead, he just points at me and says, you're a bad guy. I don't like your vibe. And I went, what? And then no! And then he shouted out, pointing to me, this guy's causing trouble. What? And then
oh my God.
Yeah, out of the blue, nuts. And so then I walked past Jean-Claude Van Damme to get my towel and other things from my bike. And he turns around as he's pedaling and he goes, "You're probably jealous of me because of my money." And I go, "What the fuck is wrong with these people?"
Oh my God.
So now I go down to the floor to talk to the manager because I don't want to get kicked out of the gym and something I didn't do. And so
Oh my God.
so now the guy is shouting at me down, and the manager's keeping us apart, even though I'm not aggressing. And in the background, Jean-Claude Van Damme is now down on the floor because it was a loft where he was, and he's stretching his legs and he's doing like,
oh my God.
I'm thinking he's getting ready to kick my ass. So I figured, in this town, your credentials, your fame are going to trump anything. I've seen it over and over and over again. I mean, OJ got away with murder because he was famous, right? So,
yeah.
Anyway, so this was getting more and more embarrassing. And 300 people in the gym are watching this drama that I don't want to be in. It just happened because I was being nice. And that's the crime in LA. I was being nice. And I didn't know what to do. So I thought I would double blind him, which is what I fucking did, didn't I, mate? And this is what I did. I realized that, like a lot of expensive places and gyms, I'm going to get in trouble for this, in LA with taste and in Hollywood executives, you're going to see a lot of fellow Jewish people working there. You're not going to know if they're Jewish. You might. They wear a yarmulke, but you might not. But you can assume, especially in that particular area. God, I'm getting in trouble. But anyway, so I just, with all my acting might, I shouted and pointed, and I said, "You can't call me a insert N-word for Jews.
Yeah.
You can't call me a insert N-word for Jews. I'm a member of this gym. That's a terrible thing to say." And now the guy aggressing, he didn't say anything. And, he's backing down, backpedaling as quick as he could. And then I pointed to Jean-Claude Van Damme, and I'm so proud of this. And I shouted so 300, 400 people could hear me say, "And you're a crap actor." And
my God. Well,
the place applauded. The manager consoled me.
Oh, my God.
I mean, this was an interesting psychological trick because he never called me anything. He was just aggressing towards me. But I realized in that moment that it would be impossible for me to explain myself out of that situation. So the only thing
you handled it really well, and I must apologize because while you were talking in the beginning of that, I was thinking to myself, how did you stay in character for like nearly 2 weeks as a butler?
You mean the previous story?
Yeah, that was brilliant. But I'm just saying, I love the Trino, but I do apologize. I didn't really. I was unaware I was. I must.
Nah, it's okay. I'm probably
here. I think.
No, it's all right.
Anyway, there we are.
It's all good.
So I think we had a photo of. Did we have a photo of Quentin Tarantino? Didn't we? I think.
Yeah. So I got a story there. There's a photo.
Yeah.
I met Quentin last year at the Comedy Store. Let me explain that when you get the photo. There we go.
Oh, there you are.
So here we are. Now this is what they call Sacred Grounds, which is the private area behind the Comedy Store where comics can go smoke whatever they like.
Right.
And you have to be a paid regular, which I am, name on the wall, etc. to do that. This is where Joe Rogan was hanging out before he moved to Austin, and it's just a nice place to to sit down. And I do smoke tobacco and other things, and so I just I've met comics out there. It's a good place to meet people.
Yeah.
So I go out there, and there's Quentin Tarantino. I never met him, never was in a room with him, and
great picture, by the way.
Yeah, it's a good picture. It is. And he was holding court, but not really in a royal way. Everyone was telling him for some reason really gross stories. Some comic was telling a story. I think it was Delmar Randy who took the picture, was telling the story of a comedian who tried to do an act with dynamite and blew off a finger or something. And Quentin slapping his leg and laughing. Oh, that's a great story. So I told Quentin part of my Jerry Lewis story because I knew that Quentin knew Jerry. That was intriguing to everybody. That caught everybody's attention. I told another story, I can't remember. But then when the theme turned to gross out stories, I told the story of Freddie Prinze, who was a great comedian who committed suicide in his 20s at the height of fame, and he blew his brains out. And a friend of mine, great comedy writer and comedian, the late Biff Maynard, knew Freddie and was at his bedside and leaned down to him and said, Freddie, you needed this like a hole in the head. I don't know if you have that expression in the UK, but
it's one of my favourite expressions.
Yeah,
it's up with my mother's favourite, which is the difference between scratching your ass and tearing it. I think that's a brilliant one as well.
So that's the story. You know, that's a very funny thing, right? So
you touched when you were talking to Quentin Tarantino, and you talked about the Palladium. Of course, obviously, that's our sort of godly church over here, as you well know.
Yeah.
So and I know when we had lunch, you mentioned that you've done quite a massive risk.
Well, before we get to that, let me just finish this story.
Yes, of course.
So I tell the story, and nobody's laughing because it's a very funny line. Everyone's sort of staring at me. I don't know if they didn't understand the expression because it's a generation ago, maybe. But even Quentin should have understood that expression. And I went, what? And then Quentin says, you told that story too violently. There's too much blood in it. And I didn't embellish on the blood, but I did, talk about the bandage and everything. And it's a sad thing, but it was certainly a funny line. And us comedians, especially Comedy Store LA comics, Comedy Store comics, are really, really expert at going to a really dark place and finding comedy, which is why we had Sam Kinison.
I did notice that while I was there last month.
Yeah. So anyway, so then I said, "Oh, great! Now the great Quentin Tarantino is directing me on my joke being too violent." And everyone laughed at that, and then we talked more. But it was just one of those things where you're reminded, and this is a good thing, really good thing, I think. You're reminded. I met a lot of celebrities in my day, and some of them come with an entourage. You can't get near them. There's a funny Eddie Murphy story I have about that. And some of them are just regular people like Robin Williams was, and Quentin seems to be. And I mean, everyone can, they have their protections. I mean, I don't have his phone number, but it was just what it does most importantly for me, and I think for the other comics, is that you stop this unfair measuring you do about yourself compared to in the industry. I'm not famous. I'm not rich. I don't get what I want. Now you're making what essentially is a movie star director laugh and having a conversation, a respectful conversation.
It's nice, but it's nice though, isn't it?
It's heartening. Yes.
Is it?
Your turn. You're the host.
No, I'm just saying. I'm looking forward to the Palladium. I've just managed to get hold of some footage of my good self there. First time for about 18 years. So,
you played the Palladium too.
I did. Yes.
Did it cost you $500,000?
It could have done. It was it was a very close run thing, but I won't bore you with that. I'll save it for when I'm on your show.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah,
but no, I will share it with you without a doubt, and then you can play the footage there. Mind you, I look about 12 in 2006. I will say that. Yeah. So what year did you do that then? That must have been.
That was September 8th, 2002.
Righto.
And the short version is that this was the third in a series of comedy benefits for Turning Point Scotland. I did the first two in Edinburgh at the Queen's Hall, 900 seats, and then the Edinburgh Playhouse, 3,300 seats. And then I just kept wanting to up the ante each year, and I was bringing over American comics. And my goal was to get an international deal, an annual deal, a deal. I was the producer; I wasn't running the charity. And anyway, so through I was trying to get. I was talking to Mike Myers because I was trying to reunite Mike Myers and Neil Malarkey, who I knew, who was on the First Time Laughter, and Roseanne was.
Miles? Who's that? Excuse me.
So Mike Myers, when he lived in England, was a comedy duo, double act,
right,
with a gentleman, very brilliant improviser at the Comedy Store, London, Neil Malarkey. They were Malarkey and Myers. Oh, and I knew Neil and had Neil on the First Time Laughter in Edinburgh.
Right. Okay.
And he was great. So I was, and I had met Mike a few times in LA, and actually he used to hang out at the coffee house I used to go to when I was working on a early screenplay. I'd run into him a lot, actually. Also, this Greek cafe in Hollywood in the 80s. Anyway, so Roseanne wanted to do it, but she kept changing her mind. And I actually met Spinal Tap and was talking to their manager and them. and I needed a star, and it's and finally, here's what perpetuated the whole thing is that when I came back to L.A. from London, I come back for a month, 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. I go to the Improv or the Comedy Store, another comedy club. Word got out I was producing this big show in London that was going to be done on television, and so comics would come up to me and they go, "Hey, man," and I'd talk to them and I'd say, "Yeah, well, send your tape to," and I'd give them the address, or maybe I would just collect them at this is pre-links.
Yeah, of course.
And send them to my producer in London, and I'd do the best we can to get them on the show. And I tried to produce a show. I think I succeeded with a perfect combination of creative unknowns, relative unknowns, including some mates of mine who had done HBO specials, but now had fallen between the cracks of old age. And so make the show interesting, and some names that could draw in and put bums on seats. So there was a comedian who was desperate to get on my show and kept confronting me at comedy clubs. "Hey, man, what about that show?" And I go, "Well, I sent your tape to my producer." And then finally he comes up to me and he's all sweaty and he's like a zombie. And he goes, "Did I ever tell you that I'm friends with Jerry Lewis? I can get you Jerry Lewis on your show." And I had no idea that Jerry Lewis had a reputation. I had no clue. And the next thing I knew, I was down in his yacht, and he was, like my new best friend, but also, and he telling me about his life and really interesting stories, and about Marilyn Monroe and Peter Lawford and JFK and, and Dean Martin, of course. And so
for the audience at home, let's just, because some people might not know who Jerry Lewis is. I do know who Jerry Lewis is, but he was at the height around the time of the Rat Pack. Am I right? Is that right?
Yes, and ironically, the Rat Pack purposefully banned him, excluded him.
Right.
In fact, when the Rat Pack, which was Frank Sinatra, Joey Bishop, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and one more or two more guys, I'll look it up. When they visited JFK at the,
Dean Martin, did you say Dean Martin?
Yeah, Dean Martin, Jerry's ex-partner.
Right.
Yes, of course. When the Rat Pack were visiting JFK at the White House, and this is according to the great Sean Levy, the writer, Jerry snuck into the White House somehow and was in the next room listening in and all that. So, I mean, I started to deal with this very insecure but demanding personality, and he demanded a 36-piece orchestra, 8 people in his entourage, 5-star Dorchester hotel.
Oh my God.
It went on and on and on.
Oh
and
my
on
God.
and on. And I negotiate, and I'm like on the phone with Peter Graham in London, whose father still alive, and still playing, played percussion in the Benny Hill Orchestra, and Peter had always had some, great jazz stuff done at downstairs at the King's Head, my home club. And so anyway, turns out I didn't need a 36-piece orchestra. I needed an 18-piece. Secondly, I didn't have to fly Jerry Lewis's conductor over. Each person cost around $17,000, and this is 22 years ago. So that was airfare and hotel, and maybe, I don't think I did stipends, but maybe transportation for some people. I found a Gareth Valentine, who was the orchestra leader when Jerry did Damn Yankees in the West End. I got him for $1,000. I don't want to, sorry, Gareth, but I mean, a reasonable price. One night, go down to the West End, pick up the stick, and move it around a bit, mate. Click your $1,000 and get the fuck off. Fuck off. It was $1,000. So great guy, really nice guy. But there were conditions. Jerry was going to do press conferences. He backed out. He pulled out of the show several times. I had to threaten him with a fake press conference in London that I was going to go on, and the world was paying attention. The entertainment world was.
Oh my God! What a living nightmare.
Well,
there you go, folks. You see, show business is
Listen,
It's spiteful, isn't it, in some places?
listen, Adrian, listen. It's taken me a long time, a lot of therapy, a lot of crying, uh, and a lot of laughing to realize that, I stepped into this whole thing consciously. I wasn't
Yeah.
a victim, a bit of a victim of a con in a way, maybe, but I don't think he knew what he was doing. And it was kind of, you know what it is? You remember the movie The Exorcist?
Yeah.
There's one very, very short, it's not even a scene. It's a flash, maybe two or three frames, maybe one frame, when Father Karras, who's not the Jean, not the Exorcist, but the younger guy,
Yeah.
played by Jason Thingy, great
Yeah.
actor,
Yeah.
is in the room looking at Reagan, the girl who's possessed,
Yeah.
and it flashes, and she's like ugly and possessed, and then for a second, his mother, his own dead mother, is there instead.
Yeah.
And that is to fuck with his head. The devil was fucking with his head. That's what I dealt with Jerry. Was that he would cry. He was 76.
Tell us, did he come? Did he turn up? Did the show?
Yes
happen?
and no. He shows up. Didn't bring his orchestra music, sheet music.
No.
That orchestra for rehearsal and performance shows up. Cost me £25,000 in 2002. Yells at me when I ask him for the music, and he goes, I'll give you a show. Locks himself in the dressing room with my wife, who was co-producing, and telling her what, about, your husband has a lot of aggression. They go, what are you talking about? Only when I'm being pushed, I have aggression to defend my world. Yes. And then when he, and there's so many other permutations. Daniel Kitson, brilliant, famous line, comes out and he says, it's always been a dream of mine to play a third full Palladium to people who are here to see a dying man. Did you hear that, Adrian? You look like you're asleep.
I am. I'm just.
You are asleep.
I'm not. I'm just speaking to the producer and asking him to delete something on the top, as he can probably hear me now anyway. So that'll save me texting it. So that's fine. Yes.
Anyway, so the punchline is, I finally get word that Jerry won't come out of the dressing room until I leave the theater. So I hide in the wings. He comes out, sees himself on this big giant video screen of him, young and famous, looks out at the half full audience and collapses and falls right over. So I had to go out on stage, and it made international news and announced that Jerry was taken to hospital.
Oh, he was taken to hospital for real?
Yeah.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ. So there we go. So that's mad. I thought I had a challenge with my one. It was I was standing having arguments between Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber's management and the artist that I was working with's management. One wanted to take the money for the merchandise, and the other one saying they can't have it for a month, and so on and so on.
Well, it's always
tell us about the boat and the Houses of Parliament. That sounded like a bit of fun in the games. I was
yeah, that was a good one. So let me just make a little comment about what you just said, if I might. So I think one of the things I learned, this was trial by fire. I had never dealt with anything like this, and what I learned was that if you're producing a show that's, let's say, 6 months out or 3 months out or even 2 months out, as the producer, you have control over the talent, no matter who they are, no matter how big they are, because you can always replace them. And you may have to print. This happened in Edinburgh one time with a LA comic. You can replace them. You have to print the poster again. You have to change the PR, but you can replace them. There's always replacements. But when you have a big star, the bigger the star, the closer you are, that's a good one. The bigger the star and the closer you are to the show, they have you by the fucking bollocks.
Correct.
That's really what it is.
Yeah.
And so I think being a smart producer, which maybe I am now compared to then.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned. So, all right. So let's House of Parliament. So it was 1995. I was doing a bunch of gigs in London, visiting from New York, and I wanted an interesting place to stay. So I found in Loot magazine, 150 quid a week, a cabin and a houseboat at Cheney Walk in Chelsea at the Battersea Bridge. It was really fun, great
Wow.
summer. It was as
Wow.
hot as it is now.
Wow.
When you're on, yeah, I know. But when you're
That's
on the water,
mad.
you know, it's like 15
Yeah.
degrees cooler.
That's
And
not-
there was parties and fun. And basically what happened was I had fallen in the water in a kayak and nearly drowned. In the sense that my body was quickly being forced under a rubbish barge. I swam back. And then that night, my boatmates challenged me to go on a midnight run on a motorized dinghy, that rubber raft that somebody had, like from a Bond movie. One day, this boat comes right up to our barge, and the guy ties it off and runs away and disappears and leaves the boat. It was like what the fuck. So one of the boatmates was going up and down the river. So, come on, American, you're not afraid. You know, you went in the water already. He went, yeah, well, all right, fine. Do we have enough petrol? You Americans worry about everything. So we get in this boat. We're heading towards Parliament from Chelsea. It's like 4 of us. And then all of a sudden, this giant party barge, disco, like the Marchioness, I think, was what that toppled over.
I've done a few gigs on them, yeah. That's it.
Right. Coming right towards us. We run out of petrol.
No.
Remember I just said, do you have enough petrol? And they,
yeah.
American, what are you worried about? and so the only oar was broken in half.
Oh my God.
And so luckily the tide was out. We dog paddled our way to the embankment. There's a stone old staircase.
Yeah.
We climbed upstairs, went over the precipice, and we're now in the backyards of the House of Commons. Now this is pre 9/11, so it took 10, 15 minutes for anybody to show up. And it wasn't helicopters and
you'd have been shot now, wouldn't you? It'd have been like a film set.
Definitely would have been dead. No, it was like some overweight Bobby from Yellow Submarine. What you all on? Come on.
Talking about film set, we've actually got an award-winning film that you produced coming up, I believe. So
yeah. So that's the story.
They let it. Background. We always like to give him a little shout out. He works hard setting all this up. So let's have a look at you in action. If
the whole film.
Well, I think he's going to put a little.
No, just the trailer. I think
just the trailer. I think that'll be good. I think he's gone to sleep. No, he hasn't. Here it is. Brilliant.
Oh no! This is the film. This is the Joe Bohr. Me as an Uber driver. Okay, 90 seconds. The whole film. Joe Bohr. Here we go. Get the sound up. Can't hear it.
Can't hear it.
No, can't hear it. Can you?
No, can't hear it. Nigel Mill, mate. I think we've got the heat. He's going to put it. He's probably going to go again. Don't worry. But I think the heat. The Gremlins is
It's all right.
It's Gremlins.
Okay. It's
Gremlins are taking over.
Mistakes. Look, this is the way I look at it as an artist, and I really mean this. Mistakes and things that happen are really the gold dust on our artwork. It really is. It gives us a chance to retake, to remaneuver, to rethink. You know, I used to be I grew up in a family of hotheads, and I was a hothead myself, and I would, lose my shit if there was a mistake, like everything depended on it. And I've learned to relish the moment more and more and more. That's really the key to my survival, is just relish the moment. If I'm going to be homeless, then I'm going to pretend to be a British guy because I miss England so much. My heart breaks every day. So I can pretend to be British.
Yeah.
That's really what that was about, by the way. So when I had a lot of dosh coming in for 25, 30 years, and suddenly I'm no, I'm not looking for sympathy. Listen to me. I don't want sympathy. I don't even want empathy. I want hatred. I want people to dislike me. No, they already do. Mission accomplished. No, I'm just saying that I had a bicycle instead of a car. Right. So I would now drive along on a bicycle. I'd get into shape, and I'd notice the little restaurant I never saw because I was driving by too quickly.
That's true. Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing. I'll get another example is when I used to have the money and would dine at very expensive restaurants 3 or 5 times a week in Los Angeles, Hollywood. All right, here it is. Let's hear the sound.
There we go again. Have we got the sound?
Yeah, and he's got to back it up too, because that's not the beginning of it. No sound, Nigel.
Still no sound. Never mind. Let's go to Robin Williams then. Let's have a little.
Yeah, okay, I'll tell you that story.
Let's go to Robin Williams.
Robin Williams.
Well, I've got a good excuse to get you back now before Christmas.
I was playing fixture Doughty. Here we go.
Ah, there he is, Robin Williams.
There you go.
Don't panic, dear.
This is at the Throckmorton. This is at the Throckmorton Theater backstage up in Mill Valley, which is the Bay Area, San Francisco area. It's a great theater, and that man sat down has passed on. That's the great Mort Saul. It was the great original political comedian. There's Mark Twain, and then there's Mort Saul. Right. Although some might say Lenny Bruce, but Mort Saul was really a political comic. And Robin, who I knew but didn't really know. I mean, I had his phone number. We hung out a little bit when I was hanging out with the comics, hanging out with him. And I brought him on stage several times and whatever. And my friend Rick Wright, who I co-host my Comedy Dish with, as you know, was in from London playing the Throckmorton. So I visited him, and Robin was there because he would play regularly. Great guy. I made him laugh. Told him the Eric Douglas story at Jongleurs. He fell over. And Robin would always remember people. He remembered me when he'd come into the Comedy Store, and see me, and he'd go, "Hey, how you doing?" It's like, wow. And that really, again, it's like that thing I talked about with Quentin, where when you're insecure in this business, which we almost always are on some level, and you have, it's like when I hung out several times with Eddie Izzard, or, had drinks with Ricky Gervais at the Hen and Chickens in Islington, because Ricky and Stephen Merchant were in the audience of the London Palladium. I mean, if I see Eddie, he knows. If I come to see him at a show, usually I can get backstage. He knows me. We've hung out. We've had drinks. And I think that's not that I'm not trying to say that I'm so much more recognized over there. I just think it's the nature of the social beast in England.
Absolutely, 100%.
Right? Am I right about that?
2 minutes left.
Yeah. Right.
So, is there anything you'd like to tell us about? I mean, you're talking about coming back over. Are we working on that? Do you think?
Yeah. Well, it keeps getting pushed back. So, I think where it's going to happen is, I mean, Edinburgh's starting this week, right? This weekend. I totally miss Edinburgh, and of course, like every experienced Edinburgh festival performer, I don't miss Edinburgh, but I do miss Edinburgh. I got to get the knee surgery. So I would say because it's hard for me to do too much walking. Right. So I would suppose I'd be physically ready in the spring, perhaps financially ready in the spring for a short visit. But if not, my goal would be to do Edinburgh next year.
Nigel apologizes for the mess up with the.
That's all right.
His film, but
it's been a lot of fun, and I'm really.
We'll put a link at the bottom, ladies and gentlemen. So if you want to look at it after the show, you can click on it, and hopefully it will play with the sound. I'm going to say, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on. I know you're busy. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. We haven't even gone through half the stuff we want to. So
no, listen. Next time, can I make a request? Well, first of all, let me thank you, but let me just say, I really enjoyed hanging out with you. You're such a gentleman, and you're so wise, and fun to be with. And when we had that lunch in Beverly Hills, I mean, that's where I really value people, and just the time you spend with them. That's all that we have ultimately, and that's one of the reasons I love being an Uber driver. I get to meet people, never see them again. So when I'm going to come to London if I can for a visit as soon as I can. Thank you very much, and thank you, Nigel.
Thank you very much. Good night. God bless, Stephen. Enjoy.
Good night. Good night. Thank you.